Hello my friends, alright, here we go for the first step, importing the dataset. So, it's going to be actually exactly the same as before, even if we are in a completely different branch of machine learning, the unsupervised learning branch. But you know how to do this, so let's create a code cell and let's do exactly the same as before. Meaning, we start by importing the pandas library, to which we give a shortcut PD, and then we're going to create this new variable dataset, right, which will contain our data.csv dataset. All right, I'm going to teach you a new thing now. The variable actually dataset is not a CSV file, it is a pandas data frame. It's good that you also know that. It's a structure thanks to which we can actually then use the iloc function, for example, and other tools. All right, so let's do this. Let's call our pandas libraries first with the shortcut PD, then from which we use the read underscore CSV function, inside which we enter in quotes, well, the name of our dataset, data.csv. All right, and that's our first code cell. So far, exactly the same as before. So let's run this cell. There we go, perfect. Then we create a new code cell, just to display the 5 first rows of this dataset, for example. And to do so, we take our dataset from which we call the head function. If you want to display the 5 first rows, you don't have to specify anything here because 5 is the default value. But if you want to display the 10 first rows, for example, you can enter 10. But 5 will be enough. So let's run the cell and we will have the 5 first rows of our dataset. Here we go. So quick reminder, in this dataset, each row represents a customer of a mall, and for each of these customers, the mall gathered the 2 features or independent variables. First, their annual income, and second, their spending score. The more they spend in the mall, the higher will be the spending score, and the less they spend in the mall, the lower will be the spending score. And the spending score takes values between 1 and 100. So for example, this customer here doesn't spend much in the mall, but this one spends a lot, okay? And so we're going to build our k-means algorithm to identify some patterns, which will then help them all increase the average spending score of their customers overall. Okay? That's basically the added value provided by the k-means model. So now we're going to move on to the next step. It's not finished yet for this first importing the dataset step of this implementation. We're going to create a new code cell in which we're going to make still, this array of independent variables, our array of input. And why is that? That's because in the next step, when we use the elbow method to find the optimal number of clusters, we will use a function that will take as input exactly this array, this array X of the independent variables. It cannot take the dataset like that. Just like before, it needs to take an array containing those 2 dependent variables. All right, and you know how to do this. However, this time you simply need to take all the rows and all the columns, right? Because we don't have a dependent variable to exclude, and therefore it's going to be even more simple to make this array X, because indeed we'll just have to take all the rows and all the columns. Okay, so let's do this. Let's call this array X just like before, and then remember we take our dataset from which we call the iloc function. You add square brackets here. And then, as simple as that, since we want to extract all the rows, all the customers and all their features here, the annual income and the spending score, well, we simply need to enter here a colon to take all the rows and another colon to take all the columns. All right, as simple as that. And then we just add a dot values to make sure that this, X especially, is an array, which is exactly the format expected by this special function we're going to use then to find the optimal number of clusters. All right, so let's run the cell. Here we go. And then let's create a new code cell just to have a quick look at X. Then we play the cell. And here is X, which will be exactly the same as our dataset here, but in the form of an array. An array of 2 dimensions. I'm going to scroll up here. For some reason, it showed us the bottom of this array. But there we go. We have the exact same customers, 1539, 1539, 1581, 1581. So the exact same customers with the same data, only within an array of 2 dimensions. All right, and that's our array of independent variables. Good, perfect. So done for the first step, importing the dataset. Let me actually close this so that we can have more space now to code, but you know the data set, you know what we want to do, and so let's do this in the next tutorial. Alright, so now I'm just scrolling down to find our next steps. Here they are. Our next step will be to use the elbow method to find the optimal number of clusters. I won't ask you to try to do it yourself first, unless you want to, of course, but this will actually be not that simple. We will have to code a for loop, so it's going to be a bit more challenging than what we used to do. And so please, the only thing I'm asking is get some good energy for this next tutorial, grab a good coffee, and whenever you're ready, let's tackle this together. And until then, enjoy machine learning!